Late 1939, the Adderley Park factory, Birmingham, England. A squat, beetle-backed vehicle rolls off the production line and onto the wet concrete of the loading yard. It is painted dark green. It has 4 wheels, a short bonnet, and a body shaped like an upturned bathtub with sloped steel sides and almost no windows. There is no turret. There is no gun. There is no armour plate worth measuring. It weighs just over 3.5 tons empty, carries a 4-cylinder petrol engine producing 70 brake horsepower, and has a top speed that would embarrass a London bus. It looked like nothing. Not a tank, not an armoured car, not even a proper truck. It looked like a delivery van someone had forgotten to finish, an afterthought bolted together from parts left over from better vehicles. Officers who inspected it for the first time saw a machine with no obvious purpose and no obvious future. It was slow. It was underpowered. It was loud. Over the next 6 years, more than 10,000 vehicles exactly like this one would tow every 25-pounder field gun in every British campaign on every front, from the sand of El Alamein to the beaches of Normandy to the jungle tracks of Burma. They would haul the guns that broke Rommel's armour in the desert, the guns that shattered German positions on D-Day, and the guns that covered the Rhine crossing in 1945. They would serve for 20 years, equip a dozen nations, and earn a reputation for reliability so total that artillerymen trusted them with their lives without a second thought. Its designation was the Morris Commercial C8 Field Artillery Tractor, but every gunner who ever served behind one called it simply the Quad, and it was the most important vehicle the Royal Artillery ever owned. To understand why the Quad existed, you need to understand the problem Britain faced in 1937. The British Army was mechanising faster than any other force in Europe. While the Wehrmacht still relied on horses to tow the majority of its artillery, and the Soviets depended on agricultural tractors barely capable of 15 miles per hour, the War Department in London demanded full motorisation. Every gun in every field regiment needed a purpose-built prime mover, a vehicle that could carry the entire 6-man gun detachment, their ammunition, and their equipment, while towing both a loaded ammunition limber and the gun itself, over roads and across open ground. The existing fleet was inadequate. The Vickers Light Dragon was a tracked vehicle, fast enough off-road but painfully slow on tarmac. The Morris CDSW was a 6x4 truck that could not cope with soft terrain. Neither could keep pace with the new mechanised divisions Britain intended to field. A specification was issued. Guy Motors of Wolverhampton responded first with a prototype called the Quadant, a play on its 4-wheel drive and the insect that carries loads far exceeding its own weight. But Guy's limited production capacity meant the army needed a second manufacturer who could build in volume. Morris Commercial Cars of Birmingham was given the contract. Their vehicle, based on the existing C8 4x4 chassis, inherited the Quad nickname Wholesale. The vehicle itself was a masterpiece of practical engineering, not because it was advanced, but because it was simple. The Morris EH side valve engine displaced 3,519 cubic centimetres, and produced 70 brake horsepower at 3,000 revolutions per minute. That was modest, but the engine was mounted on a subframe isolated from the main chassis, a design decision that reduced vibration transfer and dramatically improved long-term durability. Power reached all 4 wheels through a 5-speed manual gearbox and a single-speed transfer case. A winch rated to 4,000 kilograms sat over the rear differential, ready to drag the vehicle, its limber and its gun, out of whatever ditch, crater or stretch of desert sand had swallowed them. The body was distinctive and immediately recognisable. Its sloped sides and rounded rear section, the Beetle-back shape that would become famous, were not designed for ballistic protection. The Quad carried no meaningful armour at all. The shape existed for a single, grimly practical reason. In 1937, the War Department fully expected the next war to involve chemical weapons. The smooth, curved surfaces allowed decontamination crews to hose down the vehicle quickly after a gas attack. It was a precaution against a threat that never materialized, built into a form that became iconic. Fully laden with crew, ammunition and equipment, the Quad weighed over 5,600 kilograms. Add the number 27 limber loaded with 32 additional rounds, and the 1,900 kilogram 25-pounder gun behind that, and the entire train approached 9 tons. 70 horsepower hauling 9 tons uphill was, as veterans consistently noted, not ideal. Towing speed rarely exceeded 25 miles per hour. Range was approximately 160 miles on twin 68-litre fuel tanks, but the Quad was never designed to be fast. It was designed to arrive, and it did. The Quad evolved through 3 marks. The Mark I, roughly 200 built, featured permanent 4-wheel drive and a locking front differential. The Mark II, approximately 4,000 built, was mechanically similar but added door windows and a canvas roof section for ventilation in hot climates. The Mark III, Nearly 6,000 built from 1941 to 1945 brought selectable four-wheel drive, improved ground clearance through an underslung front axle, and one critical change. Late production Mark IIIs received an entirely new square body that made the vehicle look like an ordinary cargo truck. The reason was lethal. The Beetle-back shape had become so recognizable from the air that Luftwaffe pilots could identify artillery positions instantly. The new body was pure tactical camouflage, designed to keep gun crews alive. Now, before we get into where the quad actually fought and what it endured when it got there, if you are enjoying this deep dive into British military engineering, hit subscribe. It takes a second, costs nothing, and helps this channel continue producing these histories. The quad's first combat came with the British Expeditionary Force in France in 1940, towing 18-pounders, 18 25-pounders, and 4.5-inch howitzers alongside the new 25-pounders just entering service. The campaign ended in catastrophe. At Dunkirk in late May and early June, the BEF abandoned over 85,000 motor vehicles and 2,000 guns on the beaches and in the fields of northern France. Hundreds of quads were among them. The Germans captured them in such numbers that many were pressed directly into Wehrmacht service, some photographed bearing the Balkenkreuz cross normally reserved for armoured vehicles. The irony was considerable. The quad's Beetle-back body looked armoured. It was not, but the Germans apparently thought it was, and marked it accordingly. Britain rebuilt its shattered artillery arm with astonishing speed, and the quad was central to the reconstruction. By the autumn of 1941, quads were arriving in Egypt with the 8th Army in volume. They would serve through every phase of the Desert War, from Operation Compass through Operation Crusader at Sidi Rezeg, the battles of Gazala and the Cauldron, and both battles of El Alamein. In the Western Desert, the quad operated in what were called jock columns, ad hoc mobile groups of tanks, guns, infantry and anti-aircraft weapons that roamed the open desert, harassing Rommel's supply lines and screening the main force. Each column depended entirely on its quads to move, position and reposition, its 25-pounders fast enough to fire, displace and fire again before the enemy could respond. The speed of British artillery deployment became a source of genuine confusion among German soldiers. A well-drilled gun crew could dismount from the quad, disconnect the limber, lower the circular steel firing platform carried slung beneath the gun trail, maneuver the gun onto it, and fire the first round within minutes of arriving at a new position. At sustained rates of 3 to 5 rounds per minute, and with one Canadian battery famously clocking 17 rounds per minute in a timed exercise, the fire was so rapid that German units became convinced the British had developed some kind of automatic 25-pounder. They had not. They had the quad, the limber, the platform, the gun, and 6 men who had drilled the sequence until it was instinct. At 2nd El Alamein in October 1942, over 1,000 field and medium guns, virtually all towed by quads, delivered an opening barrage that rivaled anything seen on the Western Front a generation earlier. The quad made this possible. Without a reliable, standardized tractor that could operate in desert heat, with sand clogging every mechanism, the guns could not have been massed, positioned or supplied. From North Africa, the Quad's War moved to Sicily with Operation Husky in July 1943, and then to the Italian mainland. At Salerno, at Anzio, and at Monte Cassino, quads hauled 25-pounders up mountain roads and through valleys, where the mud was deep enough to swallow a wheel to the axle. At the assault on the Gustav Line at Cassino, a corps-level bombardment employed over 800 guns. Every one of them arrived at its firing position behind a quad. The 111th Bolton Field Regiment, Royal Artillery, fought from North Africa through Italy with their quads and ended the Italian campaign operating from the Adriatic island of Vis, supporting Yugoslav partisan raids against retreating German forces. Their guns, towed by the same quads that had crossed the Egyptian desert, were now firing across the Adriatic. The vehicle's versatility was not theoretical, it was geographical. For D-Day and the campaign in northwest Europe, quads landed on the Normandy beaches from June 1944 onward. They served through the hedgerow fighting in the Bocage, through Operation Goodwood, the breakout at Falaise, the rapid advance through Belgium, and Operation Market Garden. At the Rhine crossing in February 1945, the 30th Corps alone deployed over 1,000 guns that consumed approximately 6,000 tons of ammunition. Every gun was positioned and repositioned by its quad. Every round was carried forward in a quad or in the limber it towed. In Burma, the quad faced its most punishing conditions. The 14th Army, the Forgotten Army, hauled 25-pounders through monsoon mud, jungle tracks, and across rivers that flooded without warning. The 28th Field Regiment fought from the Arakan through the sieges at Imphal and Kohima, where Japanese forces came close enough to assault gun positions directly. At the gun box at Bishanpur during the Battle of Imphal, a field regiment was surrounded and had to defend its guns at close range. The quad's winch proved essential for repositioning guns under fire in terrain where no other vehicle could have moved them. A specialist airborne variant was also developed, the C8AT Mark III, stripped of its canvas roof, metal sides, doors, and toolboxes to reduce weight to approximately 4.5 tons, just light enough to squeeze inside a Hamilcar glider, alongside a 17-pounder anti-tank gun. The clearance was extraordinarily tight, with barely 2.5 feet to spare inside the cargo hold. These airborne quads saw action at Arnhem during Operation Market Garden, though the stripped-down tractors proved unreliable and were withdrawn from service afterward. On paper, Germany's closest equivalent, the Hanomag half-track tractor designated the Sd.Kfz 11, looked superior. It had 100 horsepower against the quad's 70. Its tracked rear suspension offered better cross-country traction. Some variants carried light armour protection, but the half-track was vastly more complex and expensive to build, and its interleaved road wheel system was notorious for clogging with mud and ice. Approximately 9,000 were produced, but here is the critical fact. Despite Germany's entire half-track programme, horses remained the primary means of towing artillery for most German infantry divisions throughout the war. Only motorised and panzer divisions enjoyed mechanised traction. The British Army, by contrast, was fully mechanised before the war even began. The quad was the reason. The Americans took a different approach entirely, using general-purpose trucks and fully tracked high-speed tractors like the M5, which was derived from the M3 Stuart tank chassis, and produced 235 horsepower. But the American system separated the gun crew from the towing vehicle. The British insistence on a single purpose-built vehicle that carried the gun detachment, their ammunition, and their equipment together as one tactical unit was unique, and it produced arguably the most efficient field artillery system of the war. A British field regiment operated 36 quads, 24 towing a limber and gun, and 12 towing paired limbers as ammunition resupply vehicles. Each division could put 72 25-pounders into action. Every gun served by its own dedicated quad. The quad served far beyond the war that created it. British and Commonwealth forces used it in the Korean War from 1950 to 1953, and during the Malayan Emergency. The Royal Netherlands Army deployed quads in the Dutch East Indies. The Danish Army received surplus vehicles fitted with locally built bodywork. The British Army rebuilt many quads in the early 1950s, and the last were not sold off until 1959, giving the vehicle a remarkable 20-year active service life. From more than 10,000 built, only a few dozen are believed to survive today. The Imperial War Museum at Duxford displays one in its Land Warfare Hall. The 7th Toronto Regiment of the Royal Canadian Artillery restored a complete quad, limber, and 25-pounder combination, first parading it on the 50th anniversary of D-Day in June 1994. Several running examples still attend military vehicle rallies in Britain, typically displayed as complete 3-element trains, exactly as they would have appeared rolling toward a gun position in 1942 or 1944. Late 1939, Adderley Park, Birmingham. A squat Beetle-backed vehicle rolls off the production line. 70 brake horsepower, no armour, no gun, no glory. The engine factory in Coventry that built its power plant would have its roof blown off in the Blitz, and workers would carry on assembling engines under open skies in a British winter. The vehicle itself was underpowered, noisy, rough riding, and completely unspectacular. And yet, it worked. It worked in the sand of Libya, where the heat warped metal and clogged filters in hours. It worked on the mountain roads of Italy, where the gradients would have stalled a more powerful engine without a lower gear range. It worked in the bocage of Normandy, where the hedgerows were so dense that only a short wheelbase vehicle could thread through them. It worked in the monsoon mud of Burma, where the tracks dissolved under the rain, and the winch was the only thing standing between a gun crew and a position they could not reach. Over 10,000 were built. They towed every 25-pounder in every British campaign for 6 years. They were not fast, not comfortable, not elegant, and not remotely exciting. They were reliable. They were there. They were exactly sufficient for the job they were built to do, and they did that job without complaint in conditions that destroyed vehicles designed to be superior. The Morris C8 quad was never the best vehicle in the British Army. It was simply the one the entire British artillery could not have functioned without. That is not glamour.